The tributes to Sir David Amess speak deeply, not just to the man, but to democracy itself. From the local Muslim community, shocked and no doubt fearful themselves, to the Citizens Advice Centre, a servant of the people who was murdered doing his job.
We must carry on doing our job as MPs, serving our constituents, serving our country. That's what we're elected to do. And the tragedy that has happened here in Southend should not stop us from continuing it in that job. David would have wanted MPs to carry on doing the job for our constituencies and our country.
The murder of Sir David Amess has sent shockwaves through British politics. How do we protect the men and women elected by their peers to advocate for, represent and speak for the people? Because much of their work isn't done here in Parliament behind security cordons and metal detectors, but at open surgeries and community meetings up and down the country with little or no protection. 5 years ago, Labour MP Jo Cox was also murdered in her constituency. The Home Secretary today mooting new security measures for local meetings in future, like police guards.
There are other things linked to policing and security as well. There are things already in place, but I'm now very much, and Lindsay Hall, the Speaker of the House, and I, with the police and with others as well, we need to close any gaps, basically, where we feel that, you know, there are concerns.
But opposition parties warn tighter security must not make it harder for constituents to meet MPs.
This is an attack on our democracy, so the answer cannot be less democracy. That we must not allow our democracy to be diminished because a terrorist attack has occurred.
Police continue to search properties in London, with the 25-year-old British man arrested at the scene still in custody. It's been reported the suspect's called Ali Harbi Ali and is the son of a former Somali government advisor. It's also been reported he may previously have been on a British government de-radicalisation programme. And after 18 months now of lockdown, there are wider fears about bedroom radicalisation.
The pound shop radical is much easier to develop now. I grew up at the time of the IRA and used to have sophisticated cells. You'd have a quartermaster, you'd have loads of people involved in the team. Actually now you can be sitting in your bedroom, get radicalised, go and get a shop from the pound, a knife from the pound shop, and then you're there to be a martyr. That's the difficulty we have.
Last night's vigil to Sir David Amess, a man who dedicated his career to his constituents.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood, who called for a pause in face-to-face meetings, and I asked him whether police protection or private security is now the answer.
That's the big question that we are now debating after the sudden loss of our dear colleague. It's very, very clear that there is a growing threat there from extremism, and it manifests itself in isolationist events such as this, of individuals that are inspired by extremist behavior, and we need to challenge that. So it's up to the police and the Home Office to do their review, to come back and understand what those threats are. But in the medium time, we do need to perhaps take cautions on the behavior and how we actually interact with the public. And what the key message has come across in the last few days is just how critical and important that bond is with the British public that we do not want to lose.
Yes, it's been striking that since your sort of temporary suggestion of a pause to face-to-face meetings, a lot of your colleagues pushed back and said, well, no, we mustn't go down that road.
Yeah, far be it for me to advise any other colleague or MP as to what they should do. I look at this from the prism of security. That is the angle that I take stock of these things. I was traveling with David Amess in Doha, in Qatar, only last week, and we were discussing the security implications of terrorism and so forth, consequences of departing Afghanistan, when extremists, terrorist groups will be buoyed by the fact that an insurgency has defeated a superpower and the consequences of that on the wider stage. But ultimately, we have to recognize that there could be a copycat style attack. The police have already made that clear. Therefore, yes, absolutely, let's stand up to the terrorists. Let's make sure that our lifestyles, that the way we go about business is not altered, that they do not win. But we need to do that in a cognitive way that makes sure that MPs, staff, and indeed the general public are kept safe.
Do you think this is putting people off going into politics?
Well, we need to make sure that doesn't happen. We want good people to want to step into public life, but we need to have those assurances that it will be a safer environment. It's worth pointing out, though, that there are those on the front line in our world, whether it be a bus driver, a nurse, or a social worker, that are facing all sorts of challenges every single day. Perhaps the difference here is the fact that this was extremism. This was an individual wanting to take another's life with a false pretense that they are somehow going to be rewarded by it. That's the wider threat, the wider challenge that we need to look at. But your premise that unless we deal with this, fewer people will want to step forward, I think is absolutely right.
The conversation has already broadened, though, to online harm. Do you think the two things do definitely go together?
It's certainly the case that online messaging, social media and so forth has moved farther ahead than legislation and indeed the culture of what is accepted has been able to keep up. And that has prompted a debate. The ability to be anonymous and to be able to attack in the way and accuse and try and cause harm, get underneath people's skins is absolutely the case. And there needs a wider debate about that, not just in politics, but in all aspects of life, in schooling as well. We've not addressed this. And again, it's put people off wanting to move into public life for the fear of the threats, the anxiety that actually causes the stress and so forth. Big questions here that we now need to consider.
Tobias Elwood, thank you very much. Well, Sir David Amess's family has just issued a statement thanking people for the tributes paid to him, which they say have brought them so much comfort. They say the support from friends, constituents and the public have given the family strength in the wake of his cruel and violent death. Well, I'm joined now by the Conservative MP, Andrew Mitchell, and I'm sure you will first want to pay tribute because you knew him well and worked very closely to him.
Yes, I do, and my heart goes out to his family and the brave statement they've just issued. And for the last 8 years, he's been my parliamentary neighbour at Westminster in the next door office. So we've seen a great deal of each other, and I've very much admired, as I have since I first met him when we were both in Parliament in 1987. He was there from 1983, but I've known him well, and he is the best of us. And obviously, we deeply mourn this tragic event.
Indeed, but I mean, the conversation today is very much turning to how to keep MPs and democracy safe. I mean, do you have worries about police officers at surgeries, background checks on people making appointments? Do you think that would change the nature of your interaction with constituents?
Well, I think the Home Secretary is absolutely right today to have set in place the reviews of these security matters. And I greatly respect what Tobias Elwood has just said. He's a former soldier, he's the chairman of the Defence Select Committee, and he understands these security issues better than most of us. But my view is that to change radically the way in which we interact with our constituents would be a terrible mistake for democracy and would mean that the bad guys are winning. So I think we should move with care. After the murder of Joe Cox in my own constituency, we looked carefully at the security, we took advice, and I'm happy that the advice that we took then is the right advice to continue with today. And, in the end, we don't want to change this fundamental relationship with our constituents. That's what democracy is all about. I walk around my constituency every week. I've been there now for more than 20 years. People come up to me, they tell me what they think about what's going on, sometimes supportive, sometimes not. But that's the very essence of democracy. And, to change it in some of the ways that are being suggested, I think would be a terrible mistake.
Do you think involving the police at those surgeries would have an effect on who comes to them? I mean, if you think about the debate in the public realm over the last couple of weeks, it's been about trust in the police in the wake of the Sarah Everard case.
Well, I think that we have the police nearby in Sutton Coldfield. We, of course, rely on them for our security, but I have no intention of having the police in my advice sessions. I think that the security circumstances which we have set in place are the right circumstances, the right measures to take, and I'm not going to put that sort of barrier between me and the constituents who are seeking my advice or help.
Do you ever feel under threat yourself?
Well, no, although we have had an incident some years ago which in fact led to a man being put before the courts and being locked up, in fact, and he was threatening to kill me. And I don't think that I took the issue as seriously as I should have done. And in the end, I did take steps because I was very concerned about my staff and those who worked in our office in Sutton Coldfield. But he was mentally ill, and I feel very sorry for him and for those around him. I regretted very much the measures we had to take.
Andrew Mitchell, thank you very much indeed.